This following segment with director Ralph Senensky was filmed just shortly before he passed away. I hope you enjoy it. Well, here we are again.
We are.
Welcome, Ralph, and thank you for being back with me and agreeing to share more of your knowledge of television and your history in television with all of our viewers. I know they feel that they get a real education through this channel, and I'm happy to be able to be providing that for people who have an interest in it.
And I'm happy that you're doing it. Just, I wish there were more people like you.
So I don't know if there was a particular place you wanted to start.
What I want to do is, what I think would like to do is that rather, I just don't want to talk about like my shows. I'd like to relate it to television. And I'm not a historian. I always consider myself a foot soldier on the field of television.
Great.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I know you have some definite thoughts and feelings, having spent so many years from early years of television, about the history of it, how it's evolved, and where it's at now. So if you want to share that.
Mostly how it evolved. When I came to the Waltons in 1973, and Will Geer greeted me saying, "You know, you're one of the pioneers of television."
Hmm.
And I said, "Oh, I'm not. I'm not. The pioneers are those guys the decade before in New York in those small studios with live television." But the way things evolved through the years, and of course through my view of it from today, I think maybe I was. Because let's go back for a moment and say, and look at the live television in New York really was an outgrowth of theater. I mean, television in those small studios was almost like theater in the round with cameras photographing it. And the move, it took a while because Hollywood was hoping that television would just go away.
Mm.
But television didn't go away. And as a matter of fact, television put a big dent into the film industry. When people were able to start seeing drama and drama coming into their own homes, they didn't have to go to the movies. And the other thing, the government, at about the same time, the government had taken a stand about the fact that the studios owned chains of theaters where they were running their movies. And that was monopoly.
Hmm.
So just about the time that television was arriving, at the same time, the film studios had to sell their chains of theaters.
Hmm.
And there was television, and television at the beginning was saying, "We don't want any part of that. I mean, that's the new kid in town, and we hope he's only in town for a short stay." It took about a decade for them to realize that television was not going to go away. And it was just about the time of that I'm going to talk about tonight. My first foray into film television was at MGM on Dr. Kildare. The first season I was the assistant to the producer. I got to direct an episode. And the one we're going to talk about today is the second one I did, and it was one of the early shows of the second season. It was a show called The Mask Makers, a medical show about plastic surgery. I came, and when I arrived at the studio, got my script, and it was a good script by Jerry McNeely. This show had three major characters: Evie, a young lady, very successful professional artist, for an apartment store, designed their ads.
Mm.
course, Dr. Kildare, and Larry, who was a fellow intern with Kildare, and also a sort of a date with Evie. That they were dating, but mostly they was casual. They were just good friends. The thing about Evie was she had a big nose. And so Jane Murray, wonderful casting director of Dr. Kildare, we got together, and our main goal was to find somebody to play Evie. And Jane had the list that she brought, and we spoke about the actresses on the list. Mentioned Carolyn Jones. And I knew of Carolyn Jones' work, kind of. I mean, I'd seen work on some of the mid-1950s television shows and some of the feature films that she was in. And I remembered her as a quirky blonde. And I also remembered that I thought of her as like a young Betty Davis. Hmm. And so I was interested, and I thought, yeah, let's go with Carolyn. And so Jane sent an offer off to Carolyn's agency for Carolyn to do the show. There was much that I didn't know, but that I did know many years later when I read a biography of her. And I had known that Carolyn had gone to the Pasadena Playhouse. What I didn't know was that she was there at the same time I was.
Oh, wow.
But we weren't in the same class. Huh. I was in the class that graduated in 1948. She graduated in 1949. And when Carolyn graduated in 1949, she was 19 years old. She was from Texas. And so Carolyn headed into Hollywood, got an agent, started going on auditions. And it was interesting. Carolyn went on these auditions, did the readings, got very fine reaction, very fine review, much praise, to her as an actress, but she never got cast. Hmm. And she finally realized it was probably because of her large nose. Hmm. So back to Texas she went and had the rhinoplasty, plastic surgery, had the new nose healed, and then came back to Hollywood to continue her pursuit of stardom. And now she was going to these casting sessions, auditioning, and getting roles. They were small roles, usually uncredited, but in, again, these mid-1950s television, which was and features. But along about 1953, and I read this, Carolyn auditioned for what was a big feature, a role in the feature, which was From Here to Eternity, with Burt Lancaster, Montgomery Clift, Frank Sinatra. She was cast. Small role, but this was 1953. And then she came down with pneumonia and had to drop out. The producers recast Donna Reed in the role. Donna Reed played it. And at the end of the year, Donna Reed was nominated for playing of the role with a nomination for Best Supporting Actress for an Oscar. And she won. But Carolyn continued. A couple of years later, 1956, she was cast in a film, an Allied artist film. It was a sort of a horror film. And it was a plagued film. They said it was just, everybody was fighting with everybody, producers, director. There was a time when they thought the film might not get made, finished, and released, but it was. And it was released, to no acclaim for a while. But through the years, the film started to gain viewers and more viewers and more viewers until it has become a cult classic. And the film was Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Ah.
Carolyn is in it. Continued work. 1958, again, she auditioned for and was cast in The Bachelor Party, a film written by Patty Chayefsky, to be directed by Delbert Mann. And they liked her a lot, but the blonde hair didn't quite fit the character as they were seeing it. And so they made Carolyn a brunette. Mm. She maintained for the rest of her life. And when she got the script, as the story goes, she finally went to Patty Chayefsky and asked to be out. She said she wasn't right for the role. Mm. They talked. And they talked. And Patty Chayefsky rewrote her role for her to play it. Mm. And it ended up, it was not a big role, but scattered appearances, but one major 8-minute scene, which she played. And at the end of the year, Carolyn was nominated for an Oscar for Best Supporting Actress. Hmm. And again, through the years, she was doing other things. She was Elvis Presley's leading lady in King Creole. She did A Hole in the Head with Frank Sinatra. She did Career with Dean Martin. She did, I mean, she was doing, and she was working, but there wasn't that breakthrough role, the breakthrough to move in, to become even more important, to become a star. Mm-hmm. So the script arrived at the agency. There was a large agency with several agents, and they read the script and they were reluctant to submit it and to tell her about it, bring it to her, for fear that because of her own past, that she might be insulted. Mm. And so they were refraining from it, except for one agent, Bud Moss. And Bud Moss called Carolyn and said, got a script that I should tell you about. It's a medical story. It's a plastic surgery story. Carolyn, it's an amazing script, and it's a Dr. Kildare. Dr. Kildare, in its second season. In its first season, it had become a big success very quickly, and it was a big hit. And so she said, she said, well, why don't you come by? He said, you'd like to come by. And she said, well, come by tomorrow at 5 o'clock. I'll be having cocktails with June Allison. Come by and drop the script off. So the next day, 5 o'clock, Bud arrived at their house with the script, sat down with Carolyn, and then told her the plot, that story of Evie. She's a friend of Dr. Kildare's. She has a large nose and kind of influenced by Dr. Kildare. She learns about plastic surgery because she has a large nose, and because of him, she learns of rhinoplasty, the surgery, and has the surgery. And the story then is the aftermath. And it is not always what is expected. And Carolyn said, wait. She said, don't go away. She got up, left the room, went upstairs, came back downstairs, had photos of herself that she had taken when she left the playhouse, the photos that she'd taken to give to agents, that she showed him. And she said, I want to play that part. Mm. And so they accepted it. The first time that I met Carolyn was 2 days later into my prep, when I was prepping, when she came to the studio, not for a costume fitting for a nose fitting.
Mm.
And I met her in the producer's office. And I do remember very strongly my first reaction to her when I saw her. And I mean, she's a movie star.
Mm.
She's a movie star a la Joan Crawford. And
Mm.
she carried herself and had that bearing, warm and all that. She was a movie star. And so Carolyn and I took the photos, went over to makeup, gave it to the makeup man. He looked at it. He said, yeah, I can do that. He said, I think I'll make the nose a little larger. And so he put Carolyn in the chair, put the bib around her, and started applying the plaster to the nose and started working on it. And it was amazing. Again, I was watching her, and it was amazing. All of a sudden, the movie star was dimming.
Mm.
And he was doing it. She was making comments about her nose and joking. And I was kind of seeing a bit of the older, the younger Carolyn, and in a way, seeing a little bit of Evie.
Mm.
We go to Metro, and the first set I'm going to film is going to be Evie's apartment. And Charles Hagedorn, wonderful art director on the movie. And Charles Hagedorn, incidentally, was somebody who had a big influence for me. He was the art director, of course, on my previous year. And the day that I was scouting the backlot locations for it, Charles said to me, remember the words of John Ford, move the actors, not the camera.
Mm.
Remember that. And fortunately, I don't think directors today do remember that.
Mm.
He was a wonderful art director. The very first scene, which was a group playing charade.
Mm.
Evie, Kildare, Larry, three couples, and Evie is doing the first one. And right from the beginning, the minute there is a reference to a nose, Evie makes a comment about her own nose.
On the nose.
That's one signal I don't have any trouble with.
I took Carolyn, we went to the famous MGM commissary for lunch. And at lunch, Carolyn told me that when she was going to have the surgery, her surgeon had told her, whatever you do, Carolyn, when you wake up that night after the surgery, do not look in a mirror.
Mm.
Now, we had there's a short scene with, she's already prepped, ready for surgery, but still talking, short scene with Kildare. And then we're into a dark corridor, and Larry, the friend of Kildare and the friend of Evie, we see him move through the corridor and go to and open a bedroom door, and then we're inside the bedroom and he sees Carolyn in bed, quiet, resting. So he closes the door, and then in a bit, Carolyn starts to move. Sits up, moves out of bed, and in the darkened room, crosses over into her little bathroom attached to the hospital room. And standing in front of the mirror, she turns on a light. And there's this face with ugly bandage on the nose, tape stretching across the cheeks, eyes, disheveled hair, and Carolyn starts to cry.
Mm.
To more than cry. She starts to scream. She gets hysterical, and a nurse comes rushing in to take her back to bed. Few days later, another scene. And we see Carolyn in bed. We notice the bandage on the nose is a little smaller. Dr. Kildare opens the door, sees that she's awake, comes in to talk to her. He realizes that she's disturbed and said, no, it's nothing. But he consoles her and says that, that it's going to get better. When he keeps at her, she turns away because he said, well, Caroline, what's the matter? And she said, well, you'll laugh. She said, I've been thinking. Up until now, I've known who I was. After the who am I going to become? I just looked at that scene. It was so quiet, so tender. And I mean, the two of them, I must say, the acting in this, Richard, Carolyn, and Mike Kellen, who played Larry, and even Warren Kimmerly played the doctor, but mostly the three, they really were. It really, really, really were good. The next scene we see is Kildare in the bar. It's the bar across the street, right across the street from Blair Hospital. He's having a sandwich, and Larry and Evie appear. They sit down, and Evie announces that this is her first day out, and that Larry has come and kindly has escorted her. And the faces, she preens. She says, how do I look? And Kildare says, you're lovely. And she starts to make a comment, and then she stops and said, I don't have to do that anymore. And she goes on and says, I don't know what to say. And Kildare says, thank you. So she smiles at him and she says, thank you. Now, and at the next scene, we're in the entry and the lobby of Evie's apartment house. And Evie and Larry are coming in. They've been out to dinner on date, and they're chattering, and they move to the door, and she's opening the door. She says, we want to stop in for a cup of coffee. And he said, no, I have an early call tomorrow. He said, but I don't have much time, but how about how about if we do something on Wednesday? And Evie very defensively says, thank you, Larry. It's been lovely, but you don't have to do this. He said, I'm just asking for a date. And he looks at her and they look at each other. And he leans in and he kisses her. And there's just a moment, and she responds. She holds out to it, and it becomes a more passionate kiss. They slowly break apart. And as they look at each other, he moves in to kiss her again, and she turns her head away. And she says, why couldn't you have done that last month? She turns to go into her apartment, and Larry says, what about the date? She turns back, looks at him, doesn't say anything. She just nods, yes. She opens the door and she goes in. We cut. Larry comes and asks if he can borrow his car. So he says, sure. So he gives him the keys, goes off, and then he chases in after him, and he sees Larry putting a shirt on, a tie on, and he asks, what is it? And he said, well, Evie's been acting strange. He said, Kills that just last week they were driving along and they had stopped at a stop sign, and he was telling his story, and she had no reaction. She was not responding to him. And he said to her jokingly, well, ma'am, if you're not going to talk to me, I guess I'll just take you home. And she said, he said her response was, "You don't have to bother." And she got out of the car, slammed the door, got into a cab. He was just concerned about her, so he was going to go over and just check. So we see Kildare's going to go with him. So there we see the two of them outside of her apartment, ringing the doorbell, and nobody's home. So they head back to go out, and as they're nearing the entrance into the lobby, they see Evie approaching with a very handsome young man. So they duck just sort of to the side where she can't see them, but they can see her. And the two stop, and the gentleman kisses her goodnight, and it's a passionate kiss. And she comes in and sees the two of them. She said, "What are you doing here?" Larry, so disturbed by what he's seen, by her behavior. Doorbell rings, and it's Kildare. And she goes to it, opens it. It's Kildare. She tries to shut it. He pushes back. He won't let her shut it. He comes in. When they come in, she said, "What was Larry doing here?" And Kildare said, "He was worried about you." It's a long scene, but the big part of the scene was that at one point, Kildare says to her,
You seem bitter.
I am.
Why?
I'm bitter about 28 years I lost. Every few thousand years, somebody sits down and decides what's going to be called beautiful. Whatever it is they decide. Those that don't fit the mold have to get along by being funny. And they're not even allowed to be bitter about it. Laugh it up and you'll get along just fine.
she goes on and on. That's gone, but she's making up for it now. She's going to make up for it. She's just going to keep doing it. Gets more and more emotional until she finally breaks down and says,
Please go home. Can't you see how ashamed I am?
Next scene is he comes into Larry's room and to tell him about what had happened, and Larry's not interested. That's not interested, and so Kildare leaves. Phone rings. He picks it up, and it's Evie asking him to come over. He said, "I don't think there'll be any use." And we cut to her, and she tells him she's taken some pills. Doesn't know how many, and of course that now he's concerned. We're in the hospital, and Kildare rushing in to the nurse's station where Larry is. He asks about Evie, and Larry says she's all right. She's come through, but Larry's cold, and Kildare asks, "Can I see her?" And then Larry lets go at him because he's telling him it's his fault. That she wouldn't have done it without putting it done. And Larry walks away. And Kildare is stunned that he's being blamed. Goes down to her room, goes in. She looks at him, said, "Can we talk?" She doesn't answer. So he leaves. Kildare now recognizing and wondering about his own responsibility. It's left with Kildare with this awful, awful feeling of guilt. Was not responsible. He looks over and he sees Larry. Most of the script, all of the script was very well written. This scene between Kildare and Evie, I had trouble with the time. It just had to do it. It was only a third script, so just get it done and make it as real as you can. But I look at it now, and Kildare is accusing her of treating Larry badly because he's not handsome. And it was just dumb. Already. But, and of course, that's not the case, because she says that if she has treated him badly, it's because she doesn't believe that she could let him love her because of the way she has treated him. And Kildare sees the light, and so he goes out, grabs Larry, pulls him, pushes him into the room. And here's where I wish it could. Now, 60 years later, I would stage it differently because Evie goes,
Would you come over here a minute?
Kildare should have just pushed him in, left them there, gone out, closed the door, but not closed it, and looked and just watched with them. And see them, but don't hear them talk. And maybe see Larry move, and you can move closer. And as he gets close enough that he starts to sit on the edge of the bed, Kildare would close the door. Then wish I could go back and reshoot it. And that's the show.
Was that, I don't know when plastic surgery or cosmetic surgery became
Later.
the elective sort of surgery that is so prevalent now. At that point in time, was it?
I don't. No, I don't think so. No.
Yeah.
Again, I don't remember. I don't remember.
Yeah. Because it certainly wasn't something that I think we heard a lot about. When I was younger and growing up, I don't remember hearing as much about it as you do now. And I was thinking as you were recounting that story, there were times when it reminded me of Pygmalion.
Yes.
And, the end of My Fair Lady, when she sort of says, you've made this lady out of me, but now what happens to me and what am I good for? That those aspects of transformation that cause a person to then have different insecurities. I always admired that Ellen Corby started playing older parts at a pretty early age because she got wrinkles early, and she, rather than going the route of trying to stop it, she made a career out of it, Yeah. I mean, it's heartbreaking that particularly actresses feel the need to do that, to have a career, and that is what Hollywood, the pressure in Hollywood, and the pressure to have a career and the pressure to keep a career, which was kind of like what that episode was about, to that sort of societal pressure to look a certain way to be accepted. And yeah, within Hollywood, it's so prevalent, and how that spills over then to women and young girls in life who aren't even pursuing a career in the arts, who feel like they need to, that's the bar. Certainly a message worth revisiting. So thank you for sharing that story.
Well, and again, it's what television did. Where you took a topic, you studied it, and you didn't just use it as a kickoff point to let people tell a story, or talk a story without really tell a story. A year after The Mask Makers, Carolyn was cast as Morticia in The Addams Family, a new series for television. The show was a big hit. I think most people today who know Carolyn Jones know her from that show. I didn't see Carolyn again for 20 years. It was at an annual Pasadena Playhouse alumni breakfast. We met, we chatted, and when we parted, Carolyn grasped my hand and said, "We have to work together again." I agreed. We never did. Carolyn died 2 years later. She was 53 years old.
Thank you, Ralph, for sharing that about that incredible episode that you did of The Mask Makers from Dr. Kildare. I will be back with more behind the scenes of the Waltons, more Ask Judy, and more special guests. Thanks for watching.